Hi, I'm David Ware with the Arkansas State Archives. And talking to you in the middle of the COVID pandemic reminds me that in the past, art and a fair amount of craft has gone into making sense of or publicizing or responding to past epidemics or pandemics. The one I have in mind in particular is the great so-called Spanish influenza pandemic of 1918, 1919, and into 1920. Arkansas was afflicted, as was the rest of the world. We call it the Spanish flu because Spain was most afflicted, or at least at the time it seemed that way. Actually, there's a fairly good chance it originated in the United States, possibly in an army camp in Kansas. Now, I have a couple things today that bring the pandemic of 1918, 1920 in mind. One of them is something that's not strictly from Arkansas, but it appeared in Arkansas. Think of it as a piece of propaganda, if you will. It's also an artistic response. It's an iconic image of that influenza pandemic of so long ago. This picture appeared in the Illustrated Current News, published in New Haven, Connecticut, basically a national semi-glossy illustrated newspaper. And it's one of the most striking images from that period. It shows a nurse looking a little like the actress Kay Francis, wearing a mask, very serious look on her face. The image is interesting in of itself because the photographer, the photographer was a fellow named Paul Thompson. And Paul Thompson, I didn't realize when I started researching this, that in fact he's responsible for a number of images that I was familiar with. Photographs from 1912 of Theodore Roosevelt walking with New York Mayor Gaynor just before Roosevelt was shot in the middle of a campaign speech. Images of New York during World War I. He was a commercial photographer, worked for various newspapers. He was a founding member of the New York Photographers Association, a loose association of professionals. And as such, he worked for the Committee for Public Information. It was basically a propaganda arm of the U.S. government, created during the war basically to shape public opinion. And the Public Information Committee not only publicized the war effort, but also put out publicity material regarding the pandemic, the Spanish influenza pandemic. And this was an example of this. Thompson's original photograph showed this nurse with a background of other nurses. But for the purposes of this graphic, it was simply cropped to focus on those deep, soulful eyes, along with a helpful message, things to do to prevent influenza. And if you read through these, they're actually pretty good advice for today. They resemble what the Centers for Disease Control put out today. The question is this art? I'm not sure. I think that it is an example of the photographer's very high craftsmanship. He remained active as a photographer. He died, I believe, in 1940. He had a good, solid career. I don't think anybody called him an artist during his time, but on the basis of this and a few of the pictures I've gone back and seen identified as his, I'd say you got an artist at work here. When we speak of art, we have to throw in the art of music and also the art of the written word. What we had, in fact, was what we call a handbill, something small, on which a fairly brief lyric or poem was printed. The title is Influenza, as sung by the elder W.H. Mitchell, District Superintendent, Fort Smith and Little Rock, District Number 6, then gives his address on North 13th Street in Fort Smith. Elder Mitchell was an elder of the Church of God in Christ. He's an African American. We know that this song has many lives. We don't know that he actually wrote it because there are several versions of this floating around. He may have been one of the earliest authors. We find variants of this describing the flu epidemic of 1929 as sung by a blues singer in 1939, recorded by John and Alan Lomax. Every time a new singer gets a hold of this lyric, it seems to change a little bit. But I think this may be an early, if not the earliest form of the influenza song. And it's something that is written more from feeling than from a sense of conscious craftsmanship. In 1919, men and women were dying of that stuff which the doctors called the flu. People died everywhere. Death went creeping through the air, for the groans of the rich sure was sad. It was God's mighty hand. He was judging this old land. North and south, east or west can be seen. Yes, he's killed rich and poor, and he's going to kill some more if you don't turn away from your shame. It was in Memphis, Tennessee. Doctors said it soon would be a few days and influenza will control. But God showed them that he's the head, so he sent the doctors to bed, and the nurses, they broke down with the same. Takes rich and poor, takes the medical professionals, takes the average sufferer on the street. This is 100 years ago, and it sounds like it had been written the day before yesterday. It's a song from a century ago. It's a song that's contemporary. It's something that 100 years from now somebody's going to be singing about, possibly talking about what we're going through now, possibly the pandemic of a century hence. There are some eternals, and the nice thing is, given the survival of an archive, the memory of this will remain to inform the next generation of what their elders were talking about, what they were singing about, what concerned them. This is one of the great things that an archive can do, provide cultural continuity, preserve cultural memories. It's what we do here at the Arkansas State Archives. We've got 200 years or more of these stories and songs. They're here for you to explore. Thank you.